president is a woman. So I think we're actually doing well, but we have not yet gotten there. It's not yet Uhuru. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Because when you look at the 2018 election results and the number of women we managed to get into parliament, into council, it shows that we're still far away from achieving gender equality. And a lot still needs to be done to inspire women to lead, to inspire women to want to change things, to be the drivers of change, because we're born to change things. We just have that touch of gold. But now we need just to put a little bit more pressure to be able to achieve a women's revolution in Zimbabwe.
Now, Benevolence, that being said, do you feel that the human rights fight in any way diminishes the plight of women and their fight for equity?
No, not at all. Actually, the human rights agenda, what it seeks to achieve is to give that platform where women are treated as equal beings, where women, they also have equal opportunities as their male counterparts in all spheres of life, in the economics, in the politics, in the home, in the church. That is the human rights agenda from how I understand it.
But where are we drawing the line to say, okay, now this is equal for men and for women?
Yeah, in terms of drawing the line, I think it also starts from the mechanisms that we put in place, from the legislative framework itself. Do the laws, the policies, do they allow, do they give room, do they recognize women as equal beings? And that is, I think, at the national level, at a bigger level. But then again, we need to narrow it down, going into the home. The society, how is it nurtured, how is it cultured? And unfortunately, I'll say this unfortunately, we still are a patriarchal society where even the most educated, the most exposed people, whom you'd assume they should appreciate the gospel of equality, when you go to the home, they will remain patriarchal. Their masculinity takes over, and it can even derail all the efforts and the gains that would have been made maybe in the different spaces, because the home itself, the culture, the person, the individual could be thinking otherwise.
Now, Linda, you are the leader of a political party that focuses predominantly on women's issues. And you mentioned that charity should begin at home, where the structures should come into place that allow the girl child to grow into a woman that is positioned for better and greater things in her life. When the women are able to achieve that, would you say there is enough support from that particular sector or sphere that they find themselves in, that sphere of influence, when they become a part of these positions?
I think I want to take it up from where I left off that time. One of the inhibiting factors that has limited women's participation in corporate governance, in politics, and maybe in entrepreneurship also goes back to the women's hobbies. What is it that they spend most of their time doing? My apologies, but I have to say this. Women spend their time watching Indian movies, soapies. They don't even watch news. They don't even understand current affairs. They do not even follow critical things that affect their livelihoods.
Is that not an overgeneralization, though? Women are concerned about what's happening in their lives.
I'm being honest. Most women, that is what they do on a daily basis. If you ask most women, I think if we were to put it on a probability of a percentage scale, we'll say 80% of women. Wow. I'll give you an example. When the marriage bill was being had, did the women go out to go and listen, to air their views? No. They did not even know that there was a marriage bill and consultations happening.
But can the women then be held responsible for not knowing about something?
Yes,
that has
they are
not
held
been presented
responsible because they spend their time on social media doing the wrong things. The Parliament of Zimbabwe has got social media handles. They post these things. We are doing consultations on A, B, C, D, and E. Yes, secondly, the other fault might go to the MPs who are supposed to go back to their constituencies and interact with their people who voted for them, that there is this law that is going to be passed. But unfortunately, I'll tell you, I went to the consultation here in Harare. There were people who had their own interests to push the agenda of small houses, and they won. Where were the married women watching Indian soapies?
Until the bill passed.
Exactly.
They started
When the
screaming.
bill passed and they started reading about it in the newspaper or hearing people talking about it on social media, they started crying foul and screaming.
Okay, that being said, women, I still feel that's an overgeneralization, but we will allow it. With that being said, Benevolence, do you feel that perhaps the manner in which the information about these really important issues is being presented to women perhaps does not resonate with them? Perhaps if they had those Indian soapies discussing these matters and these issues, the women would better receive them. What do you think?
I'll start from Linda's first remarks. Power is not given on a silver platter. The same applies, whether it's information, opportunities, you name it, it's not given on a silver platter. We are talking about equality, we are equal beings. Play your part, participate, be aggressive, chase it, go for it. Why would someone need to wait to be given something to say, oh, here it is, please, ma'am, can you participate in this?
I don't think it's a question of being presented with it as much as it is, for instance, children go to school.
Yes.
Everybody's on the same level,
Yes.
they know nothing. But as they learn, certain kids will pick up certain things faster than everyone else.
True.
So that being said, perhaps then the issue needs to be, is there an opportunity for women to recognize the need to know these things and then still have platforms that allow them to reach and get the information that they need to be able to make informed decisions about matters as serious as this that affect their lives?
Opportunities for me, they are there. The opportunities, they are there, and they are therefore for everyone to embrace. But maybe what could be limiting is the issue of socialization, the issue of how we are cultured. As women, as girls, you should deal with soft issues, play with the teddy bears, go and watch a movie about romance and all. And then the boys are watching about war and the Titanic and, you know, those, yes, those other fast movies. So you would find that in as much as an opportunity is presented to say there is going to be this happening, everyone participate, I would rather choose to follow what's happening on Instagram. What's Pinterest?
That being said,
Yeah.
we have instances like International Women's Day, March the 9th, but do we have enough women who understand what Women's Day is about? Or has it now just become ceremonial and just rhetoric to say, oh, happy Women's Day, and it ends there, but does nothing to address the plight of women?
I think it is just a cosmetic day because plenty of women do not even understand what it is. And I don't want to lie to you, if you would do Fox Pox tomorrow in town, you would notice that maybe half of the women you would ask about Women's Day or Women's History Month do not even know that we are in that month. And I've always suggested that we should have our own Women History Month in Zimbabwe in February, because February is naturally named after women in our country. And we've got a lot of things that we need to celebrate, that we need to introspect, challenges that we need to be able to sit down and speak about as women. I've always envisioned February being a month where madzimai togara padare, tichitaura nyaya dziri kunetsa madzimai, and fixing those issues. But one of the biggest challenges in this country is women are not yet there. They are still expecting their ideal leader to be able to fix their things. There is nothing for women without women. If you're not on the dining table, you're definitely the menu. And I've said this before, so long those who are leading us are the males. Don't expect them to understand the challenges that women are facing.
But women have been offered seats at the table, as it were, because now we have quota systems in parliament. For instance, in corporate world, we now have a quota system that allows for a certain percentage of members to be
Why
subscribed
should
to be
women? Why should women be offered these so-called in court quota systems? The quota systems are unconstitutional. They expired. They only had a 10-year term. They expired this year in 2023. But because our parliament is patriarchally dominated, they saw it fit to extend the 60 proportional representation seats for I don't know how long. Right? Wait, I need to clarify this. Section 17 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe is clear, and it states that any organ of government, the state, business, whatever it may be, should actually ensure gender balance. Section 3 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe clearly states that any act, any practice, any custom that is ultraviolates the Constitution of Zimbabwe is invalid. So whatever is happening in this country is unconstitutional. There's no political will to ensure gender balance, and that is the reality. And the women themselves are not yet ready to embrace gender balance. They are still comfortable in following in the armpits of the patriarchal dominant leaders, and they're comfortable in being patriarchal gatekeepers. So as long as we women are not embracing the Constitution, fighting for our constitutional rights to become a reality, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. And we'll have these conversations until we die.
I'm very glad you said that. Now, we used to have a female vice president through a quota of one female vice president, but we don't have one at the moment. We haven't had one for a few years. Are we saying, based on what you just said, that this country is just not ready for female leadership?
It is not ready. I will speak for myself. I'm on the ground trying to campaign to be a president, but the responses that you'll get. What time will you have to be a wife to your husband, etc., etc. It is unbiblical for a woman to lead a whole nation. You'll find that there is a total misunderstanding of leadership roles in this country. People don't appreciate, they do not value womanhood in this country, and that is the reality. They view women as wives, as mothers, or as objects that they can use for their own pleasure. That is the general mindset of the majority of men in this country, and that has to change. There is no woman, there is no cry. We are the ones who bring forth life into the world. We are the mothers. We nurture these men to become who they become. And I don't know where the disconnect comes in life around the teens, where the men start feeling they're more superior than the woman. At the end of the day, if we look at our historical background as Africans, not just as people from this teapot-shaped country that was done at the Berlin Conference, as Africans, an African woman was well revered in society. She was a respectable figure. That is why you find that you pay lobola for a woman. Unoripa mai kana ukawatuka, and sada mozo kunoripa baba. Unoripa mai if you do not do right by her. You'll find kuti, back then, before colonization, no one would go to war without consulting Madzitete Emuri or Madzitete Edzinza. There is no man who would take a second wife without consulting the first wife. And the first wife would give direction. No, yes, we need one maybe because we don't have a girl child or we do not have a boy child. It was a family decision. Not this nonsense that we hear nowadays of a man saying, I can have 6 wives, I can have as many women that I want. That is un-African. We need to have these conversations.
You know what, Linda, I know this is something you're very passionate about.
Yes.
And you've said quite a bit about it on your social media as well, particularly Twitter. What stride is your party taking to break the bro code as it is currently standing in the politics scene, at least?
What we are doing is we have created a safe space for women, and we have predominantly made Labour Economists and African Democrats a women's party, with women holding the most powerful positions, and that is not negotiable. Secondly, we abolished the women's wing, after realization that the women's wings, women's leagues, or whatever are just a scapegoat to give women an illusion of power which is non-existent. And our party will allow women to fight it out with the men, make sure that they get those positions to be able to make the influential decisions. I'll say this maybe for most people who don't understand. In most of these women's leagues or women's wings in other political parties, they only have 1 or 2 representatives who go to the standing committee or the Politburo. And those are the only women. And when you look at the structures of these standing committees or Politburos, you'll find that maybe there's a third only of women who sit at the main decision-making table. And most of the women are told, you've got your own wing. Why don't we then have men wings if it's all about what gender you are? So that is a structural marginalization of women, where you're put in a certain wing, where you're expected to be running around doing the decor, cooking the food for the male politicians, etc., etc. We want wholesome women who can make decisions, who can speak about pertinent issues in our society. Look at all the political parties in Zimbabwe. Look at their legal officers. They're men. Where are the women? They're nowhere to be found. Don't we have women lawyers in this country? We have them. But why are they not participating in active politics? We only have a few who are participating. So this is also my clarion call to the women lawyers in this country. Come and join politics and make your mark in the political world in this country. So what we need are inspired women, those in the corporate world, to start coming into politics and being the change that they want to see. One of the biggest problems we have in our country is we expect someone to do it for you. You cannot expect someone to do it for you. You also have to play your role. Mumwe nemumwe tikabatidzana tinogona kuachieva zvatiri kuda semadzimai muZimbabwe.
Okay, that very impassioned plea for women to do more, to be recognized more, coming from Linda Masaria. You're watching The Chase. Don't go in. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome to Chew On, the show that links people, food and culture whilst giving you a diverse culinary experience.
Pure ingredients, wholesome, vibrant and earthy dishes. When you get all the elements together, it all sings. That's what Zimbabwean food is all about. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chew On.
Welcome back to The Chase here at ZTN Prime, channel 294. Now, if you're just joining us, we are discussing women's leadership as a function for embracing equity across genders. Now, ladies, I know that women, particularly when they're ambitious, driven, and move up, so to speak, on ladders of towards leadership, they suffer from a lot of name-calling, accusation, harassment from male counterparts. And this, I know, Linda, you've experienced a lot in the political scene. And it's been damaging more to a woman's reputation. You're no longer judged by your work. You're no longer judged by your capabilities, but by these labels that are then attached to you. Now, you are an anti-corruption and human rights activist, benevolence. What are some of the challenges that you feel are greatest, particularly for women in this regard?
You have said it very well. The issue of name-calling, stereotyping of women. I'm happy and sad at the same time with the example that you have given of Linda. It's in the public domain. Instead of people looking at what you are bringing to the table, your potential, what are you able to do, we are looking at your home, your children, your marriage, your anatomy and the like. So that is one of the, I think it's one of the biggest things that create a barrier for us as women to participate in all spheres of life. You find that even in the workspace, when I wanted to make a presentation in the boardroom, they'll start talking about the shoes I'm wearing, whether my clothes are matching, exactly. My husband was seen with a small house yesterday at the shops, not focusing on what am I bringing to the table, the presentation that I'm going to make. So I think that is one thing that is taking us back. And the issue of cyberbullying also is, social media is good, yes. We are talking about going on the digital space, even in this year's theme, but how it's being used as well for women who are aspiring to take up leadership positions, I think it's something that is quite sorrowful, it's quite sad. And I've even come across a significant number of young women, and I think adults like me, we have deactivated their social media accounts due to cyberbullying. And if I hear that story of a fellow woman going through that, I'll definitely lay back. I'll go back to watch the Indian movies and maybe, yes.
You don't want to be a victim.
Exactly, I don't
like
want to
that.
be a victim. I don't know if I will be able to stand that kind of pressure. Do I have that thick skin? So it's those things that are surrounding us, the environment. I'm going back again to the issue of opportunities. Are the opportunities available? The opportunities are there, but the kind of environment that the opportunities are presented, do they allow me to also participate? They don't, because of that. And you'll find that even fellow women, we are talking about pushing the women's agenda. Yes,
But
fellow women, they pull each other, we pull each other down, and it's
that
sad.
being said, right, you have made it all the way to the top as a president of a political party. That's a huge deal for anyone, more so for a female. But like Benevolence has said, more often than not, women are victims of being pulled down, as it were, or being discouraged from excellence by other women. Would you agree with that?
I agree 101%.
So why is that? We are advocating for women to be in positions of power, positions of leadership, and yet we are still fishing from the same pond of women that are pulling other women down. Where is the challenge? Why can't we get it right?
I'll just give you an example of myself. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the women's movement in this country. If it was not for the women's organizations and the capacity building that I had through them. But sadly, years later, because I'm now ambitious, I want to get somewhere, they disconnect themselves from me. Because they've got a certain political party that they want to align with, which is led by a man. And then from the blues, they're no longer inviting me to their programs. They don't invite people from my party, but they're calling themselves the women's organizations. And this is real. I'm telling you of something that is happening as of today. And then when you meet these people, they say, no, we forgot, so sorry. Yeah, you know, there is too much fakeness in our women's organizations in this country. Yes, we have been pulling each other down. We don't want to see success stories for women who want to stand alone. We want to see success stories of women who are standing behind other men. That is the reality in our country. You will be called all sorts of nice names so long you're belonging to a certain political leader who is acceptable in that particular sphere.
Are you saying the success of women is always going to be credited to someone else?
That is exactly what is happening in our country. When you've said, I want to run this race, you're expecting your fellow women to support you. The first thing they'll tell you is, you do not have support. You will never gain support. The opposition space belongs to A, B, C, D, and E. If you want to make it, you have to belong to a certain political party. But I've been clear. If it means that I will not set foot in the parliament of Zimbabwe, on my own, I will not set foot. Because I want to leave a legacy that she did it. So that other women will be inspired years later that you can actually do it without having to be behind someone. The biggest problem that we have is we are not confident enough. We always think that we have to be behind a certain man. And I don't blame the women. I'll go back to socialization. What is the ideal leader that the girl child has ever known from a family setup? It's the father. From the father, most girl children, young women are not even allowed to leave the family home before they get married. So it's like a handover from the father to the husband. So to them, the man becomes the acceptable leader figure. So it is going to take a while for us to be able to embrace that women can actually do things by themselves. They can organize themselves, lead themselves, and get where they want to go by themselves. Other countries are doing it. We have had several countries that have got women presidents who are heading cabinet. We even have the EU, current president is a woman, but we are still years behind in Africa. Right now, I think in Africa, we only have 2 women presidents, one in Ethiopia and Suluhu in Tanzania. But Suluhu took over when the late JHE John Magufuli died. But we need to do more as women. We need to start supporting each other. We need to find ourselves and say, what is it exactly that we want? Rather than just following agendas that do not give us that breakthrough that we want as women. We're still lagging behind in a lot of things. And only a united women's front will be able to achieve the total independence of women that we are all crying for and that we all aspire to see.
Now, one of the challenges that women experience is, like you rightfully said, you can't stand alone and be successful as your own person through your own efforts. You will find situations where women are accused of being corrupt. And the president has also said corruption has basically permeated into every sphere of our society. So how do you think women have contributed to ensure that this kind of corruption or this kind of blindfolding, as it were, of their worth in such situations addressed?
I think I would want to depart a little bit from your contribution and Linda's, then I'm coming back. I think as Zimbabwean women, we are trying. We are really trying to give that space, that platform, and to encourage each other to take up the challenging positions. I think there are initiatives that are taking place even in the women's movement and even I think in government, but of course more can be done. And then coming back to the issue of women participating in corruption and the like, I think everyone, in terms of our status in Zimbabwe as a country, everyone has a role to play. We cannot really label it on women alone or the youth alone or men alone, in as much as we are in a patriarchal society. I think everyone has a role to play in the fight against corruption. And it's something that we seem to be normalizing. And it's starting even from the home setup. Going to the church, you'll be surprised. Even the church is corrupt.
It is.
Where, where you'd expect values to be at the top. So I can't put it completely or largely on women. It's Zimbabwe as a whole. You and me, everyone has a role to play.
So, but women have the larger role. Women are our first circles of influence from the time that we're young. And you said charity begins at home. So clearly we need to change the mindset that begins with how we are raising our children, how we are speaking to them, the values that we are instilling in them, and how they can then grow into being more credible.
A better generation.
And a better generation, one that recognizes the functions and equity of women in the society. Now, with the upcoming elections, what role can women play to ensure, and I mean across the board, from registering to vote, from making sure that the elections are free and credible, to what role do women have to play in every aspect of these elections?
Women have been playing their role in every election. The only role that they haven't been fully playing is the participation, being the candidate. Since time immemorial, women have always been the organizers. Women have always been the highest number of voters. Women have always been the ones who make sure that the vote is cast. Most men actually don't vote. If we look at every election that happened in this country.
Is this not just the number of statistics?
Even
Zimbabwe
with the
has
statistics,
more women than men, though.
But even if we've got more women than men, if you look at the statistics, there's actually a big margin of women voters and male voters. Even the number of registered people, there are more women than men. Go to the church, there are more women who go to church than men. Women have been playing their role, but they have not been effectively playing their leadership role, which is what we now want going forward. Women have to offer themselves up for leadership. Women have to offer themselves up to be councillors. I've said this before and I'll say it again. If we had more women councillors in this country, I don't think we'll be suffering from the water problems, local clinics without medication, poor local schools, etc., because every woman wants what is best for her child.
You said it yourself. Young girls recognize leadership in the form of a man within the family structures in itself. How do we think we can break this gender bias across the board for women without attracting retaliation from male counterparts?
I think it's a process, really. It's something that we can't do overnight, and it should start from this generation of mothers, parents, adults, building into the future. Let's start instilling the issue of equality, fair opportunities in the home. Let's go to the church. The church has a role to play. The church has a huge following. The church, it commands authority. People, they follow their leaders. Yeah.
The church will tell you to submit.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying let's go to the church. Let's go to the church.
Will never deviate from the Bible. They will tell you that you're a woman to submit. So we need to disconnect the church from this conversation.
No, we cannot disconnect it because of that command, that authority. If the church leaders, they try to shift that narrative. We are respecting, yes, the leaders, the authorities, the church elders, those who need to be respected even in the home and the church. But we are saying, in terms of opportunities, let's be at par. The pastor can preach, go back home, make sure your daughter, your son, they participate in these spaces.
At this rate, are we saying there is not a particular sphere of life for women where they can expect fair treatment as their male counterparts?
Let me answer you. Wait, I think I need to answer this candidly and truthfully. As I'm sitting here, I still feel like it is a curse to be born a girl in my country. I'll speak of Zimbabwe because I've stayed here all my life. I spoke about the chores, the everything. Let's talk from tertiary education going upwards. Most young women in tertiary institutions face sexual harassment, sexual abuse, name calling, etc. You want to pass, you want your dissertation to be done right, I have to sleep with you. You finish your tertiary institution, you want to look for a job, you're also facing the same things. You want to get a promotion, there's someone who's just waiting to look for a certain favor from you. So that aspect of equal opportunities is totally non-existent in our country right now. There's this feeling of domineering that exists in most male species in our country, and that has to stop. And as women, we need to stand united on this to make sure that we've got appropriate acts that are going to be fully implemented to ensure that the girl child and the woman are well respected in every sphere. I love the way women are treated in Botswana. Women are treated like diamonds. You will not even raise your voice at a woman, even in a public space in Botswana. You will get arrested. We need to get to that stage in Zimbabwe. But here you're even afraid to walk comfortably in dressing that you're feeling comfortable with because you're going to be called names by the Windies, the Touts, and everyone else. So there is a total shift of mindset that we need. The women's ministry hasn't been doing enough to protect the rights of women in this country, to have sufficient awareness campaigns for women protection, for the law to be upheld, for the laws that we have to be actually implemented and followed up by acts. It is just last year that we started working on the Gender Equality Act. But we have the clause for gender equality, which was in the Constitution of 2013. But the follow-up act was not in existence. And it's still yet not in existence. So the Women's Affairs Ministry has been sleeping on laurels. They have to pull up their socks and ensure that they are working flat out to ensure that women's dignity is restored in this country.
So you're saying women aren't doing enough for themselves to begin with.
Yes.
But how are they doing enough when we also mentioned how women are not being presented with the opportunities or the knowledge to know that you are needed in this space? How do we then bridge that gap of women recognizing where they're needed and being able to be functional and grow in those spaces?
I think we need to have more radio programs because most people listen to the radio. I think with our television, very few people watch television, Zimbabwe television here. Most people prefer watching the DSTV, etc., etc. But we need that knowledge to get to the ground. We need women's clubs. Like back then in the 80s, they had women's clubs where they were advancing the agenda to have women voting, women going to work, etc., etc. We need to do more. And that has to be pioneered by the women's ministry. What is the women's ministry doing? That is the question. We need to have another conversation here at the Chase with the Minister of Women Affairs so that we ask her these questions. What has the women's ministry been doing to advance the agenda of equality for women in this country?
Now, earlier when we were talking, we mentioned how, as a woman, particularly in politics, it's not just you as Linda Masaria in politics that is scrutinized. No sphere or aspect of your life is safe from scrutiny by the public. Needless to say, the public isn't always very kind. How are you coping as a woman in politics with wanting to encourage other women rise, as it were, in your own leadership and still have to deal with all of that?
I think when you've got a vision, you have to follow it. And you just have to shake off all the challenges. Because if you do not do that, you'll go nowhere. And you'll be kept in one place. It is actually systematic how women are elbowed out of active politics, governance positions. They will call you the unprintable words so that they kill your spirit. But when you've got a passion for something, your passion should overshadow all those sentiments, negative sentiments that come from people. Because if you're going to be looking at what every Tom, Dick and Harry has said and have that affect you, you'll go nowhere. Because they realized, they've always said women are the weaker sex, that if we call them names, they'll quit. If we do this to them, they'll quit. But I'm always trying to inspire my fellow women that if we can go through labor, we can go through anything. This name calling, cyberbullying, and everything else that happens,
it's the
we can
women
deal with it.
subjecting other women to the name calling and the judgment, particularly on aspects of how they have failed in areas that probably have nothing to do with their leadership.
That is what I mean exactly. We need to be able to overcome that. We need to adopt a sister's keeper mantra. The moment we start adopting a sister's keeper mantra and not allowing the patriarchal dominance to divide us, I think we'll go somewhere. But if we're going to keep on saying, I will not talk to Benevolence because she's from ZANU-PF, I will not support this one because she's from this political party, we're not doing justice to ourselves as women. We are all Zimbabweans first before we have different political ideologies or preferences. What should bind us together as women are the struggles that we face as women, regardless of which political party you're coming from, regardless of which religious corner you're coming from. But we've got common problems that we face as women, common challenges which need to be dealt with. But as long as we're wearing partisan jackets or religious jackets, we're not going to be able to deal with these problems. We'll keep on regressing at a stage where we are supposed to be progressing. So it is time for women to start introspecting by themselves. Are we doing justice to ourselves? Because some of the things that we fight about as women, I'll give an example. You'll find women fighting, pulling their hair out for a man. A man who was just cheating two women, who knew what he was doing, and the man will be seated there laughing. Why can't the two women say, we are sisters, let's deal with the man who was cheating on us? They can't do that because they took away that sense of value from us as women. And as women, the moment we start respecting each other, I don't think there's a time that I will want to go out with your husband because I will respect the fact that he is your husband. So I think these are conversations that we're supposed to have, the social conversations for women, inspiring each other to change our mindsets, to start respecting each other as women, celebrating each other, and fixing the problems that we commonly go through as women collectively.
Okay. So we unite as women against our common enemy, in this case, the patriarchy represented by men. But in so doing, are we also not undoing what we're trying to achieve? And the achievement here being equity between men and women. Are we not cutting off our noses to spite our faces?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. It's quite an interesting one. And I think it also comes with discipline. Because if we are not careful, we'll do exactly what we are trying to eliminate. I remember I attended a certain discussion where there was a talk about advancing the rights and opportunities for the girl child. And then someone raised a hand and asked, but in this whole discourse, so where is the boy child? So I think they could be a slim, a very small line there.
Should we not be advocating for male champions, as it were, in this situation?
That's where I'm trying to take the conversation to say, let's it be a societal issue. We are not saying we are enemies with our male counterparts. Yes, we are equal beings. We like each other. So let's understand. We need men on board to also understand the concerns, the fears,
Why are you
the
making
challenges.
excuses for men?
No, I'm not making excuses for them, but I'm saying we need each other. We are not enemies with them.
We are not
also
enemies with them, but they need to respect us as equal people. We give birth to these men. We should not always try to try and say, no, you need to understand this. By right, they should understand we are the mothers. We should tell them they are supposed to behave in such a manner.
And we should take them on board.
No,
they should be on board as well to buy the idea.
Why I'm saying this, wait. Have you ever realized that when a girl child is about to get married, she goes and sits with the tetters, with the watch, she's given advice left, right, and center. Who sits with the male child and tells them this is the way you treat a man? It's always the girl child. The wife was being told, you're not treating your man properly. That is why he's cheating. You're not doing this. Who is telling the male child that cheating is wrong? You should do right by your wife.
Fair enough.
Yes.
But
we have to stop
engaging. We continue engaging. Yes. It's also the issue of the approach as well.
Are we saying we can only achieve equity by demanding it and taking it forcefully and telling men, respect us as women?
Right.
I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, are we fighting with them to take away from, or are we trying to get to a place where everybody is on the same page, we are all on the same level, we have achieved, it's no longer about equality having what they have.
Who took men away from the respectable level and the equality level? It was colonialism. They have to shake off the colonial mindset and mentality that they have. And that is the reality. As women, we've been playing our roles. We've been mothers, we've been wives. But what we need is for them to also learn to respect women, to also ensure that constitutional provisions that are there to ensure equality actually are adhered to. It's the very same man who does not want to adhere to constitutional legal provisions that are in place. And you want us to pamper them and soften them up to say, please, can you ensure that our constitutional provisions are upheld? Please, can we have male champions to be able to help us achieve this? We cannot be asking for what is rightfully ours. We just need to step up.
I think it should be a hybrid approach. It should be a hybrid approach. I think we have made that discussion where we said you cannot achieve opportunities or power on a silver platter. There are certain instances where we should be aggressive, where we need to demand to say this is right, this is wrong, and it's fine. And then there are other spaces where we need to engage, where we need to. I'm not saying we should negotiate our rights or our equality or our space, but the approach should be a hybrid one. Let's look at what works in this space or at this given time, but the rights and the opportunities, we should equally enjoy them as women. And there is no harm.
Years.
No, there is no harm. We are talking about building a different generation. The boys that we are raising today, the future men that we are going to have tomorrow, it should start now. And if we use that engagement approach now, I'm sure in maybe 20 years to come, maybe not in our lifetime, but the next generation, it will be different. So it should be a mixed bag. Let's use everything that is at our disposal to work in our favor. Let's make use of that. That's what I think.
Thank you so much, ladies, for your time. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Linda, I know we could go on and on about this. Thank you so much for joining us here on The Chase as we celebrate Women's History Month, particularly embracing equity. Have a good evening.